Accra moved the way it always did on a Tuesday afternoon, in fits and starts, in honking protest, in the slow grudging rhythm of 10,000 people all needing to be somewhere else. The sun had long abandoned any pretense of mercy. It pressed down on rooftops and dashboards and the dark asphalt of the Liberation Road like a heavy hand that refused to be shaken off. Kofi Mensah sat in his silver Lexus SUV, one hand draped over the steering wheel, the other scrolling through emails on his phone. The air conditioning was doing its faithful work. Gospel music played low on the radio, not because Kofi was particularly devout on this particular afternoon, but because the station had not yet irritated him enough to change it. He was 34, comfortable, and conscious of both facts. He ran a mid-sized logistics company with 12 employees and a growing fleet. Not quite the empire he had imagined at 22, but respectable. His mother called it a blessing. His friends called it success. He called it a work in progress. The traffic light ahead had turned red. This section of Liberation Road was well known among Accra's street vendors the way watering holes are known among animals in the dry season. You came here because the thirsty ones always stopped here. Within seconds of the light changing, the vendors materialized, sachets of cold water pressed against windows, phone chargers dangling like vines, plantain chips in bright packaging, and men and women weaving between idling cars with the practiced confidence of people who had long since made peace with exhaust fumes. It was then that Kofi saw him. At first, the recognition didn't come cleanly. It arrived the way a forgotten song does, something familiar in the posture, in the particular angle of the shoulders, in the way the man carried himself even in the heat. He was tall. Lean but not thin. He wore a simple white polo shirt and dark trousers, not the clothing of obvious poverty, but not what you'd expect from success either. He moved between the cars with unhurried ease, holding up bottles of fresh fruit juice, golden mango, deep orange passion fruit, pale green guava, chilled and glistening with condensation in the afternoon heat. And then the face turned. Kofi's hand froze over his phone. Emmanuel Asante. Emmy Asante. Head Prefect. Class of 2008. Accra Senior High School. The name returned with the weight of an entire chapter of Kofi's life. Emmy Asante, who had commanded every assembly with quiet authority. Emmy Asante, who had mediated disputes between students and teachers with the diplomatic precision of a seasoned statesman. Emmy Asante, who had tutored failing students in mathematics on Saturday mornings, unpaid and unbothered. Emmy Asante, who had been voted by the entire school, students and teachers alike, as most likely to become a successful business mogul. It had been printed in the yearbook beneath his photograph in bold letters. He had laughed when he heard it and said, modestly, "We shall see." Kofi had not seen him since graduation day. 16 years had passed. And now here was Emmy Asante, threading between Lexuses and Kias, holding up bottles of juice in the afternoon sun of Accra like a man who had nowhere better to be. Something moved through Kofi's chest. He would later struggle to name it accurately. He would tell himself it was pity. But if he had been honest, and Kofi Mensah was not always honest with himself, it was something more complicated. It was the particular discomfort of a man who has measured himself against a former standard bearer and found, to his private relief, that the standard has fallen. He did not roll down his window. He did not call out. He did not wave or smile or honk in friendly greeting. Emmy Asante was 3 cars away, angled toward a Toyota, and Kofi sat very still for a moment. Then he raised his phone. The camera made no sound. The picture was perfect, the bottles, the sun, the traffic, and the unmistakable face of the man who was supposed to be running boardrooms by now, caught mid-step between 2 cars, selling juice on the street. The light turned green. Kofi drove on. He did not look back. The WhatsApp group was called Akosa 2008 Legends, a name that had aged with the peculiar optimism of men and women who remembered themselves as young and full of promise. There were 73 members. The group was the usual chaos: birthday announcements, baby photos, prayers forwarded from other groups, football arguments, occasional complaints about the government, and the periodic appearance of someone trying to sell something, land, cars, insurance, to people they had once shared a classroom with. Kofi stared at the photo on his phone for 10 minutes after he got home. He turned it this way and that in his mind, the way you turn a stone you found on a path, unsure whether to pocket it or put it back. He should have just called out to Emmy. Should have bought a juice and chatted for a while. Should have, at minimum, sent a private message. Instead, at 9:47 that evening, he opened Akosa 2008 Legends and posted the photo. The caption read, "Anyone remember this guy? Head prefect, most likely to succeed. Look how life turned out. Across streets don't lie." He pressed send. Then he put down his phone and went to watch television, in the way that people do when they have thrown a stone into water and want to pretend they have not done it. By midnight, the group had 67 new messages. Aya. Is that not Emmy Asante? Charlie, life is something. Oh. Head prefect selling on the road. This is why I always say, school doesn't guarantee anything. The mighty have fallen indeed. All that confidence in school and look. Selling on Liberation Road. I heard he tried some business that didn't work out. Sad. Sad indeed. We pray for him. The prayers came with laughing emojis. The sympathy came with the comfortable warmth of people who were glad they were not him. One woman sent a gif of someone falling dramatically. It received 7 laughing reactions. Someone suggested that perhaps they should pool money together to help him. The offer floated briefly and nobly on the surface of the conversation before sinking without trace, replaced by more jokes. Emmy Asante, the subject of all this, was not in the group. He had never known it existed. But there was one man who was reading every message and growing slowly, quietly furious. His name was Nana Brew. Nana had been a quiet student, not the kind you remember in school, but the kind you appreciate with age, steady, thoughtful, constitutionally incapable of cruelty. He was the sort of man who, when confronted with misfortune, asked how before he asked why, and asked what can be done before either. He had built a modest career in civil engineering. He had a wife, 3 children, and the particular moral clarity that sometimes comes to a man who has faced his own failures privately and chosen not to perform them for others. He typed his response at 11:13 at night, sitting up in bed, his wife already asleep beside him. I'm not sure what's funny here. He's working. That's more than can be said for some. Has anyone actually spoken to him? Do we know his story? Because the Emmy Asante I knew didn't do anything by accident. Before we continue, let's be careful. As our elders say, before you call an old man stupid, follow him to his farm. The response to this was mixed. A few people agreed immediately. Nana is right. Let's not be quick to judge. But the majority carried on. Someone said Nana was being too sensitive. Someone else said it was just a harmless joke among old friends. Another person said that if Emmy had really made something of himself, we would have heard about it by now, a particular species of logic that sounds reasonable until you examine it and find nothing inside. Nana read it all. He sent one final message. I'm leaving this group. Not because I'm angry at you all, I understand why it's easy to laugh. But I was taught that how you treat someone when they're not in the room to defend themselves is the truest measure of your character. Emmy Asante was the best of us. He deserves better. Good night. He exited the group. The chat went quiet for approximately 4 minutes before resuming. The following morning, Nene drove to Liberation Road. He drove there 4 times over 2 weeks, during the loose, unpredictable hours of mid-afternoon when traffic thickened and the vendors emerged. On the first visit, he found no one resembling Emmy. On the second, he was told by a sachet water seller that he'd just missed a tall man selling juice. On the third, he sat in his car for 40 minutes in the heat, watching, before admitting defeat and driving home. On the fourth visit, he saw him. Emmy Asante was there, unhurried and unbothered in the Accra sun, a small refrigerated carrier bag hanging from one hand and 2 bottles of bright yellow pineapple juice raised toward the window of a pickup truck. He wore a green polo today and had the calm, untroubled face of a man who was exactly where he chose to be. Nene rolled down his window and leaned out. Emmy. Emmy Asante. The vendor turned. There was a beat of blankness, and then recognition arrived like sunrise, gradual and then all at once. Emmy's face broke into a grin so wide and unguarded it could only be genuine. Nene Brew. Charlie. He walked over, laughing, and they shook hands through the window with the enthusiasm of men who had unexpectedly found something they hadn't realized they'd lost. Let me park, Nene said. I'm buying you lunch. I'm working, Emmy said. I'll wait until you're done. Emmy laughed. Then you'll be waiting a while. I'm nearly finished, actually. There's a spot just ahead, Auntie Grace's Chop Bar. You know it. Meet you there in 20 minutes. Auntie Grace's Chop Bar was a low-ceilinged establishment of profound character, wooden benches, checked plastic tablecloths, and a menu written in chalk that changed daily based on what the market had been generous with. The food was famous on the road. The ambience was best described as authentic. They ordered wache and sat across from each other with the slightly self-conscious ease of men rebuilding a friendship 16 years out of use. So, Nene said carefully, as the food arrived. How are you? Truly. Emmy looked at him for a moment, as if taking his measure. Then he smiled. I'm well, Nene. Genuinely well. Why do you ask like that? Nene was honest. He had decided, on the 4th drive to Liberation Road, that he would be honest. There's a photo of you. In the group, Akosa 2008 Legends. Someone took it at the traffic stop. The caption was, not kind. Emmy set down his fork. He was quiet for a moment, and Nene could not read the expression. It moved too quickly from surprise to something that might have been bemusement. Then Emmy Asante laughed. Not a bitter laugh. Not a performative laugh. A deep, genuine, slightly incredulous laugh that turned the heads of the 2 men at the next table. A photo, he said. At the traffic stop. Yes. And they thought, he laughed again, shaking his head. Aye. My people. Emmy. No, no. It's all right, Nene. Let me explain something to you. He leaned forward, elbows on the plastic tablecloth, and what followed was the kind of story that rearranges the furniture of your assumptions. Emmy had started a fruit juice company 6 years ago, Antafresh Natural Juices, in a rented space in Terma with 2 employees, 1 blender, and a stubbornness that his mother called a gift and his first bank manager called a liability. He had studied food science after secondary school, then worked for 8 years in distribution, learning every corner of the supply chain from the inside. When he left to start his own company, he knew exactly what he was doing and why. Today, Antafresh occupied a 3,000 square foot factory in the Terma industrial area, employed 31 full-time staff, and supplied fresh cold-pressed juice to 14 major supermarkets across the Greater Accra region, 3 hotels, and a growing number of restaurants. They had just signed a contract with an airline catering company. There were conversations happening, careful, promising conversations, about expansion into Kumasi. The van you see me driving to the traffic stop, Emmy said, leaning back now with the satisfaction of a man who has earned the right to that particular posture, is refrigerated. I make deliveries myself 2 or 3 times a week, not because I have to, but because I want to know every part of my business. I want to see who handles my products, how they're displayed, whether the cold chain is maintained. There's no report that can replace what your own eyes tell you. Nene listened without speaking. And when I'm done with the deliveries, Emmy continued, sometimes there are bottles left in the van, returned stock, short-dated items, surplus. Rather than drive them back to the factory, I stop at a busy intersection and sell them. In 45 minutes I can clear 2,000 cedis of product that would otherwise sit in the cold room. My factory manager thinks it's amusing. My wife thinks it's eccentric. He paused. I think it's sense. Nene was quiet for a long moment. Emmy, he said finally. I owe you an apology on behalf of people who don't know they owe you one. Emmy waved a hand. As our elders say, the one who tells the stories rules the world. But only for a while. Truth always finds its own road home. He reached under his chair and produced a brown paper bag. Inside, nestled in a small cold pack, were 6 bottles of Antafresh juice, mango, guava, passion fruit, soursop, watermelon, and a deep red hibiscus blend. Take these, Emmy said. For your family. And tell whoever posted that photo, they can have a bottle too. Free of charge. Business is good. The following Saturday, Nene Brew drove to East Legon. The address Emmy had given him was modest. He had not described the house in any terms that prepared Nene for what he saw when he turned off the main road into a quiet street lined with neem trees. The gate was wooden and unpretentious, but what stood behind it was a house of considered elegance, a generous 2-story structure with wide verandas on both levels, its walls the soft white of Siwash stone. Bougainvillea climbed one side in a cascade of purple and magenta. The garden was not the garden of a man showing off, it was the garden of a man who genuinely liked things to grow. Emmy was waiting at the gate, dressed simply in a Kenti pattern shirt and slippers, with the relaxed authority of a man in his own kingdom. Beside him stood a woman of striking composure, tall, with natural hair pinned up, and the warm, appraising eyes of someone who had heard about you and had formed her own views before you arrived. This was Abina, his wife of 9 years. She held a small child on her hip, the youngest, a 2-year-old boy with his father's expressive eyes and his mother's air of judgment. Welcome to our home, Emmy said, clasping Nene's hand. 2 older children materialized from somewhere inside the house, a girl of about 10 and a boy of 7, announcing themselves with the unself-conscious energy of children who have been raised in a household where visitors are welcomed rather than tolerated. The interior of the house was the interior of a life built intentionally. The living room was warm but not ostentatious, Ghanaian art on the walls, original pieces, not prints, books arranged on shelves with the apparent randomness of someone who actually reads them, plants in terracotta pots, a long dining table of pale wood that looked like it had been made by someone who took their time. There was a framed quote on the wall in the hallway, lettered in a clean hand. A tree does not forget that it was once a seed. Abina cooked. This was, Nene would later tell his wife, the understatement of the year. What emerged from the kitchen over the next 2 hours was a feast of such quiet grandeur that it seemed to apologize for Nene's life choices up to that point: jollof rice with a crust that crackled at the edges, koluli fragrant with ginger and cloves, grilled tilapia with an herbed pepper sauce, kontomire stew, and chilled Antafresh juices, a different flavor at every seat. They ate and talked for 3 hours. Emmy spoke about the company with the measured enthusiasm of a man who had worked through his dreams and come out the other side into something more solid and more satisfying reality. He spoke about the early years without self-pity, the bank that had said no 4 times, the supplier who had tried to cheat him on a raw material contract, the employee who had stolen a delivery van and been apprehended in Kumasi. He told these stories with the equanimity of a man who had understood, early, that every successful road is paved with the bricks of problems that didn't kill you. My grandmother used to say, "The river that forgets it came from the mountain dries up in the plains," Emmy said, pouring Nana a glass of hibiscus juice. I never forgot where I came from. I never forgot what I didn't know. That's why I still make the deliveries. That's why I still sell the extra bottles myself. The day I stopped doing the work, I stopped understanding the work. It arrived, as these things tend to, at night. It was Nana's wife who suggested it. "You should tell them," she said simply, when he came home from Emmy's house still processing the afternoon. "Not to shame them. Because they need to know." He rejoined Ecosa 2008 Legends the next morning. The group received his return with a flurry of welcome emojis and mild surprise. He did not comment on this. He posted a single photograph, Emmy Asante and Nana Brew, arm in arm, grinning on the wide veranda of a beautiful house. In the background, visible through the open double doors, was the warm light of a dining room mid-feast. His message was brief. "I found the man from the photo. I went to visit him at his home. I ate at his table." This is the head prefect of Ecosa 2008. His name is Emmanuel Asante, and he is the founder and CEO of Antafresh Natural Juices, supplier to 14 major supermarkets in Accra, 3 hotels, and an airline catering service. He employs 31 people. The juice bottles you saw him selling at the traffic stop, those were leftovers from his own delivery runs. His refrigerated van was parked around the corner. The man you laughed at is doing very well. I believe some of you owe him an apology, even if he'll never read it. I'll say it here instead, as our elders say, do not look where you fell, but where you slipped. We slipped. Let us get up better. He posted the message at 8:17 on a Sunday morning. By 10 o'clock, the group had gone quiet in the particular way that rooms go quiet when someone has said a true thing. Then, slowly, the responses came. And they were different now. The laughing emojis were gone. In their place, "Charlie, I'm ashamed of myself." "Nana, thank you. Truly. I should not have commented what I commented. God forgive me. This man is an inspiration. Can we get his contact? I want to stock his juice in my restaurant." Even the woman who had sent the falling gift returned. Her message read only, "I'm sorry. I really am." Kofi Mensah, who had taken the original photo, who had written the original caption, who had thrown the original stone, read all of this from his car on a Sunday morning. He sat in the parking lot of his church, the engine running, the gospel music playing, and he held his phone in both hands and felt the particular weight of a man who has discovered the precise dimensions of his own smallness. He typed 7 different messages. He deleted all 7. He typed an 8th. "I took that photo. I posted it. That was wrong. I didn't know his story. I didn't even try to know his story. I drove past him like he was nothing, and he was never nothing. Emmy, I know you're not here, but if you ever see this, I'm sorry. You were the best of us. You still are." He pressed send. Then he got out of his car and went to church, and sat in the back row, and listened harder than he had listened in years. Emmy Asante heard about the group chat, eventually. It was Abina who told him. She had a cousin who was in Ecosa 2008 Legends, who had screenshotted the whole exchange and sent it to her, mortified and entertained in equal measure. Emmy read the screenshots at his factory desk on a Wednesday afternoon, a bottle of soursop juice open beside his keyboard. He read Kofi's apology last. He sat with it for a while. Then he called his operations manager in and said, "We're doing a small promotion next week. Every bottle of Antafresh sold at Liberation Road intersection goes for half price. Let's give the Accra traffic something to smile about. His operations manager looked at him. Boss, why that intersection specifically? Emmy smiled. Let's call it goodwill. He picked up his phone, found the Akosa 2008 Legends group. His cousin had added him quietly the previous week and posted a single message, his first. I hear you've been talking about me. I hope the juice was cold. Emmy. And then, beneath it, in small text, Anta fresh natural juices. Fresh from the source. Ask your supermarket. Or catch me at the traffic stop. The group erupted. 63 messages in 10 minutes. Crying emojis and laughing emojis and prayer hands, the full emotional register of people who have been caught out and forgiven in the same moment and don't quite know what to do with themselves. Nana Brew, watching from his corner of the chat, sent only a proverb. The axe forgets. The tree remembers. But some trees grow back taller. There is a story told in many African households, in many languages, about a man who was laughed at on his way to becoming great. The names change. The city changes. The product changes, sometimes it is fish, sometimes fabric, sometimes technology. But the shape of the story does not change, or a man who knows himself does not need the world to confirm his worth. He needs only the next morning and the world to rise into it. Emmy Asante was that man. He did not need the WhatsApp group. He did not need their pity or their praise. He had his factory and his family and his philosophy, forged quietly over years, far from the noise of other people's expectations. But Nana Brew mattered too. The elder says, a single stick may smoke, but it cannot burn. Fire needs company. We are responsible for one another, not in the way of charity dispensed from above, but in the way of truth spoken plainly, even when the group does not want to hear it. The one voice that refused to laugh. The one man who went looking. The one cup of tea at Auntie Grace's chop bar that changed the whole story. Be the Nana in someone's story. Before you post, before you caption, before you laugh. Go and find out. Not everything that shines is the sun, and not everything that is dusty has no light inside it. Like and subscribe.